Hey, Captain Matt here with Captain's Quarters First Class, a podcast from the Lighting Trade School. Now, we've talked about a few different things here on the various episodes, and today I really wanted to talk about W 2 employees versus 1099 contractors across Christmas and landscape lighting and gemstone lighting. I talked to guys all over the country who are doing things all over the place, all over the board, and so many of them have 1099s that should not be. Now, I know when you're just starting, you're grinding out, trying to do everything on the cheap. So you're calling your employees 1099 contractors. So real quick, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I'm not in accounting, so this is not tax advice, all that. But to do it correctly does not cost you that much more money, and it protects you, right? So if you have an employee, you have workers' comp as well. Again, I know it sucks. It's an added cost. It's part of doing business, though, because if you have an employee or a 1099 contractor, even if you're just calling this person 1099 and they get hurt on the job, you are going to be responsible for them unless it's a true 1099. And then after, then it's discombobulated. It goes into the hands of a lawyer and all that. But if they are what most people call 1099s, which they're just paying employees as a contractor so they can avoid the payroll tax and the workers' comp, you are going to be held liable for that. And you're going to be back fined for not holding workers' comp, for not holding the taxes that you're supposed to hold for an employee. So you're putting yourself in a very risky position that, you have to weigh the cost versus the risk, right? So is the risk worth the reward in that case? Now, you may have been in business for 5-10 years. Maybe you don't have workers' comp. Maybe everyone's a 1099 employee, and you never had a problem. Well, that's great. You're still playing with fire, right? And as I started to grow, and I had guys out there, it wasn't a risk that I was willing to take anymore, especially on big commercial properties or, really nice homes, all of this stuff. There's always a chance for someone to get hurt. They're driving my trucks, all of that. It's important that I'm properly insured, have workers' comp, and that they're all, legally either on the books of the W-2 or legally on the books of the 1099, and have that as a real distinction. Now, the easiest way to tell about 1099 versus employee is, can they do it on their own time? Now, what that means is, for instance, I do use subcontractors to do some of the soffit lighting jobs we do, some of the gemstone lights we do. They're true subcontractors. Now, why? Well, they have their own business. I have their workers' comp on file. I have their 1099 on file. I have their general liability insurance on file. They have their own truck. They have all of their own tools. The only thing I provide is the product for gemstones, because it's obviously not something you can get anywhere. And I say, this is the deadline, right? So if I usually sell 3 to 5 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks out as the expectation set to the client. So when I get a job that I'm going to be subcontracting out, I tell them, hey, this job needs to be completed by June 1st, right? That gives them full ability to choose whenever they want, right? If they want to do it tomorrow, they can do it tomorrow. If they want to do it, the day before it's due, that's fine. It is up to them. I'm not telling them when it has to be done. They can start at 8 a.m. They can start at 1 p.m. It does not matter to me. They have their own tools, their own truck, their own trailer. Everything is theirs besides the product that they're installing that was purchased, through me. That is a true 1099. My W-2 employees drive my trucks. I use my tools. I tell them to be at the office at 8 a.m. They have to get this job done today, tomorrow, whatever the case might be. They are employees and they're W-2, right? I see often that people have a guy or two that works for them, and they're like, he's a 1099, I 1099 him. But then you ask questions and you find out he doesn't have his own tools. He doesn't have his own truck, or she doesn't have her own vehicle, right? They don't have their own trailer. You're telling them when to be they have to literally come to the office and clock in, or let you know that they're there. Certain days a week they're there having to work. That is not 1099. That is a W-2. So if they ever get hurt or if you ever get audited for whatever reason, that is going to be an issue. You are trying to skirt payroll taxes and being properly insured. It is not worth the risk. I don't know what state you're in when you're listening to this, but you can call up for a free workers' comp quote. Tell them what you're doing. I'm doing low voltage landscape lighting on the ground. Um, and I have separate classification, right? The Christmas installations are charged much differently than landscape lighting installations in terms of workers' comp. Christmas time, we're up in the air, everything's elevated, and it's like 12.6% for every $100 payroll. And for the low voltage side, maybe I'm at 4.3. I think that's what I'm at, 3.6, one of those two. Much, much different, right? Because they classify you based on what you're doing. And they're just looking at, the tables that tell them this is the chances that this person's going to get hurt or their employees are going to get hurt. So it is very easy to get a quote, and you get a quote without actually signing up. So if you're going into Christmas season this year in 2025, and you don't have workers' comp and you have fake 1099 employees, I would encourage you now. It is May, right? So whether you're listening to this now or in the summertime, call up, find out how much payroll would cost you. You get a payroll provider, right? There's ADP, there's Paychecks, there's Gusto, there's a whole bunch of them. You can just search them on internet, find out which one you like, and you'll get a cost for that. It's usually a monthly fee plus cost per check, even though it's not actually a printed check, right? It's directly deposited. This also makes it super easy for you as the boss, right? Just to know it's going to be directly deposited. You're not trying to run around grabbing cash out of the bank and handwriting checks and trying to remember it all. Super easy for you. It comes right out of your account, right into theirs, and you can get how much it would cost you to do that. And then you're also going to be responsible for part of their taxes, right? Usually about 7.5% is what you can figure, right? So they have to, you're basically matching the tax they pay. So it is commonly, the common number used is 15% of their paycheck is going to be taxes. So you're going to pay 7.5%. They're going to pay 7.5%. That's why when you hear people say, oh my gosh, I have to pay so much more because I'm self-employed, is because they are the employee and the employer. So they are responsible for the full 15%. So for your own payroll, your own check, you should put yourself on W-2, right? Well, I don't know if you should or not, but it is an option. Put yourself on as a W-2. You're paying your taxes then, right? You're paying your full 7.5% as the employee, 7.5% as the employer. So at the end of the year, you're not trying to come up with money or having to come up with some tax plan to pay back the government. And you can get that quote for payroll, and then also for workers' comp. It depends on, like, I'm in New York State, so for the Christmas time, you have to use the New York State Insurance Fund. Nobody else is allowed to insure you because we're above, I think it's 4 feet. Anytime you're above 4 feet in New York State, you have to use the New York State Insurance Fund. Your state, you're going to have to ask whether you call an attorney and pay for an hour to ask them a bunch of questions, or probably the attorney is probably your best bet there, right? And you can call up though and just get some quotes and find out. And they're going to tell you it's 4.3, 12.6, whatever the case is. And just know it's based on every $100 of payroll. And if you have an office staff or an office member, plus a sales guy, plus an installer, technician, make sure you let them know that this employee is an office person, because that will be even less expensive for workers' comp, right? Every single employee should be classified correctly. And even if they're switching from season to season or week to week, maybe you have a sales guy who once a week goes on an install. Well, you can literally have him classified. You can do it by when he clocks in, right? He's clocking in as a salesman or he's clocking in as a technician, and pay the correct rate for what he's doing. And I know that can seem super like a pain in the ass, and it is, right? It is for sure. But to know you're protected gives you a lot of peace of mind. You're not wondering, is something going to happen in the field? And if it does, what's it going to cost me? How, am I going to get in trouble? Because you're going to be properly insured with workers' comp, and they are legally a W-2 or legally a 1099, like legitimately. If you have a 1099 person, I want you to, ask yourself, do you have a copy of their insurance, their general liability insurance? Do you have a copy of their workers' comp insurance? Right? If you say no, I bet you that they're just an employee that you're paying under the table, right? That's all you're doing as a 1099. You're paying them under the table. Now maybe you file the at the end of the year and you give them you actually give them a 1099, but they're not their own business. It's just it's not real. It's not worth the risk. And when it comes to clocking in and everything, I use When I Work. I think it's wheniwork.com. It's pretty damn affordable, super easy to use. You can, have the guys have it on the phone. There's a free version, there's a paid version, there's a super paid version, right? But it's awesome. They can clock out for lunch. You can easily see what they're working, right? Like we have you clock in and you're under, barefoot lighting or sales or Christmas, right? Whatever one you're doing it, when you clock in, you put down what you're clocking in under. That way, at the end of the year, when they do the workers' comp audit, it is very easy to do an export, and it shows these are the Christmas hours for this person. These are the landscape lighting hours for this person. This is the office time for this person. Super, super simple, easy, and saves yourself a ton of time rather than having to go through hours and hours and hours. Like I did the first time I got audited by workers' comp. And I was like, this doesn't feel right. Something feels off about this. And I had a W-2, or I had a 1099 salesman that they decided was not 1099, even though I would go to the grave saying 100% that person has his own business selling other people's things, but doesn't matter. The fact is, because I didn't have easy payroll, right? Then they ended up looking at everybody and saying, well, what was this person working on June 2nd? What was this person working on August 5th? All these things. And it took me so long, multiple days to find out what project each person was working on, whether it was landscape lighting, whether it was gemstones, whether it was Christmas. And it just took such a long time. So now when you clock in, you're choosing that every single day. So there's no time. The time it takes me is just to do an export, right? It takes me 2 minutes to save it, send it off, save myself a ton of time. And yes, of course, now it costs more, right? When you're paying for workers' comp and you're paying a payroll provider, maybe paying for a clock-in service. Factor that into your costs, into your daily operating, and charge every client $40 more, $50 more a job, right? You don't have to increase everything. If you're increasing your costs and you want the same profit margin, you're gonna have to, tack that on somewhere. So adding on 40 to 50 bucks a job is no big deal, and it makes you be legit. So what do you guys think? You can find me on Instagram, Captain Matt Official. Send me a DM. What do you think? Maybe you want to talk about the guy you have as a 1099. You want to ask me what I think? Feel free, man. Shoot it over. Again, I am not an attorney. I am not qualified to answer besides knowing what I've been willing to risk versus what I'm not willing to risk. And when it comes to guys in the field, knowing that if someone gets hurt, someone falls off a ladder, someone runs over their toe with a truck and they're out of work, their family depends on me being legitimate. Their children depend on me being legitimate. That person depends on me for being legitimate, so that they know they're going to be covered under workers' comp, or we have general liability insurance, which doesn't cover injuries, but it does cover damage to property, right? So it allows you to have more confidence and sleep at night and lighten the load that's on your shoulders, right? Instead of always thinking, I know how it is with Christmas. I talked to so many of you. When you have guys out there, you're just like on pins and needles waiting for them to get back and make sure no one got hurt that day. It's no way to live, no way to run a business. Go ahead, bite the bullet, get your employees as actual W-2s, get your insurance and workers' comp certificates from real 1099s, get on a payroll provider, and get workers' comp. Cover your own ass and be a good boss by making sure that you're going to take care of that employee and their family if anything bad happens. All right, guys, this has been Captain's Quarters First Class from Lighting Trade School, and I hope you got some enjoyment out of it. Hit me up, Instagram, Captain Matt Official, and you can check out CaptainMattOutdoors.com. I still have a couple of spots left for mentoring in 2025. Once I hit that number, I am not taking anybody else. Been super, super awesome working with a couple of these guys. If you're interested, check it out, CaptainMattOutdoors.com. Hope you all have a great week.